Let's step into something incredibly intimate. If you've clicked on this explainer, you're probably carrying something heavy, something you've carried alone for a very, very long time. Tonight, we are diving into the quiet storm that rages inside the minds of deep thinkers. You see, you might be someone who has everything that supposedly adds up to a good life. The intelligence, the achievements, the respect of your peers, and yet you still walk around feeling like something essential is just completely missing. That is what we are going to map out today, the intellectual void.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt completely alone in a crowded room? And I don't mean because no one was talking to you. I mean because no one was actually saying anything. It's this very specific, almost agonizing kind of cognitive isolation. You're standing there and you see right through the superficial scripts of society. You catch the subtext, the hidden motives, the grand, exhausting theater that everyone else has just silently agreed to keep performing. And because your eyes are wide open to it, small talk starts to sound like pure static. It just drains you. You are desperately craving depth, but all you are met with is noise.
If that hits home for you, I need you to know something right out of the gate. Nothing has gone wrong with you. You just feel hollow. You aren't dealing with traditional depression here, not the kind that crashes down after a sudden tragedy or loss. In fact, your life might look absolutely flawless on paper. What you are actually experiencing is the strange, highly disorienting byproduct of a mind that literally will not stop moving. It's this eerie, constant sensation of watching your own life from slightly outside of it.
Now, to really make sense of this, we have to separate what you're doing from a very common imposter, and that's overthinking. Overthinking is a closed loop. It is just the exact same worries circling the drain, creating a ton of anxiety, but absolutely zero insight. Deep thinking, on the other hand, is an open-ended search for meaning. When it works, it's actually incredibly energizing. So here is the absolute crucial takeaway. Your emptiness isn't a symptom of thinking badly. It is actually a side effect of thinking unusually well for unusually long about questions most people never even dare to ask.
And there's a literal neurological reason why you can't just flip a switch and turn this off. It all comes down to what's called the default mode network. Now, for most people, this brain network, which handles self-reflection, just sort of hums quietly in the background. But for the deep thinker, it turns into a state of perpetual self-surveillance. You don't just experience a moment, you process it, you dissect it, you interrogate it from every conceivable angle. Your brain is woven so densely that this hyperactivation transforms totally normal everyday moments into heavy, involuntary analysis. You are, quite literally, trapped in an analytical buffer zone.
Because your mind refuses to stop searching, it inevitably crashes headfirst into what the psychiatrist Irvin Yalom called the ultimate concerns. See, most people are naturally shielded from these massive existential dreads. They usually don't face them unless a major crisis forces them to look. But highly intelligent, gifted minds, they confront these things spontaneously. Your mind just asks why so relentlessly that it eventually hits the absolute bedrock of human existence: death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. You could be 30 years old, effortlessly hitting every single career milestone, and still be quietly crushed by the weight of these ultimate concerns.
This perpetual restless searching leads directly into something known as the arrival fallacy. Think about it. As kids, we are handed this wildly simple formula. Get the grades, get the money, get the career, and boom, you will arrive at happiness. But the deep thinker sees right through the illusion. You check off all of society's little success boxes, and sure, you get a fleeting, momentary high. But then, almost immediately, that profound question echoes in the quiet of your mind all over again. Now what? The reward vanishes, and that existential void is still sitting there, completely untouched.
So what happens? Over time, this intense analysis morphs into a survival mechanism. It is called intellectualization. You basically turn into the observer. When a raw, painful emotion hits, you don't actually let yourself feel it. Instead, you analyze it. You turn a messy heartbreak into a sterile behavioral analysis. You translate grief into logistics. And hey, in the short term, it works. You feel incredibly safe. But the ultimate result? Numbness. You become brilliantly adept at understanding your life on paper, but strangely, completely disconnected from actually living it. You have essentially traded your vulnerability for a very heavy shield of intellect.
Of course, operating like this comes with a massive social tax. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer really hit the nail on the head when he said, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." Think about our modern world. It is absolutely addicted to instant superficial noise. It exclusively rewards speed and absolute certainty. But a mind like yours, it is built for depth. It is built for nuance. So dropping your mind into our current culture creates incredible friction. You see the mysteries, the hypocrisies, the structural flaws way before anyone else even glances at them. And sadly, the modern world tends to severely punish that kind of hesitation and depth.
But we have to ask, where does this actually begin? Well, it almost always starts quietly. For a lot of deep thinkers, the true roots lie in childhood hypervigilance. Maybe you grew up in a house where affection was unpredictable. Or maybe you had to constantly decode adult moods just to feel somewhat secure. Your mind learned very early on to scan the room for danger, to interpret all the things left unsaid, to play the peacemaker. You might tell yourself today that it's just intellectual curiosity, but deep down, your awareness became your armor. It was an instinct to survive.
And the brutal reality of wearing that armor for a lifetime is a profound, aching empathy fatigue. As Schopenhauer warned us, to live alone is often the fate of great souls. You are desperately craving deep, soul-level authenticity, but you are existing in a world where relationships so often feel completely transactional, entirely shallow. You can literally sense unspoken pain. You absorb the hidden tension in a room, and your emotional bandwidth is just constantly fully occupied. It is thoroughly exhausting to care so deeply in a world that so often rewards blindness.
So how do we find a way out of this? For that, we have to look to Carl Jung. He understood that true depth isn't this glorious upward climb to total control, where you finally just think your way into perfection. No, it is a terrifying psychological descent. It's a journey straight down into the subconscious to confront your own shadow. You have to realize that your constant excavation of meaning is uncovering uncomfortable truths that everyone else is actively trying to ignore. But if you ever want to find real wholeness, you have to go down into the dark. You can't just keep analyzing it from the safety of the surface.
Because if you do try to stay safely up there in the realm of endless thought, you are going to encounter Nietzsche's abyss. It is that quiet, creeping dread of being permanently trapped inside your own intellect. It is the moment when your brilliant thoughts become both your sanctuary and your prison cell. Life stops feeling like active, messy participation and turns into a constant, running commentary playing in your head. You've probably been there. Lying awake at night, your body perfectly still, but your mind is violently alive, interrogating the very nature of existence until it totally consumes you. And right here is the hardest truth you have to accept. 0. That is the exact amount of peace you are ever going to achieve by simply trying to think harder about your feelings. There is no way to decode your way out of the void. Don't get me wrong, intelligence is a truly beautiful tool, but wisdom is recognizing that some questions are meant to guide your life, not be solved like some complex mathematical equation. But this is exactly where we need to completely shift the narrative. This emptiness you feel, it is not a malfunction, it is a signal. The psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski referred to this as positive disintegration, or the demolition phase. The total collapse of your old, comforting answers isn't a failure at all. It's actually the necessary clearing of the ground. It has to happen before a much sturdier, far more complex version of yourself can actually be built.
Ancient philosophies have actually understood this all along. If you look at Zen Buddhism, you will find the concept of the empty cup. In that tradition, emptiness is not some tragic, negative void. It is a state of absolute, beautiful openness. Your profound hollowing out is, in reality, a deeply spiritual and evolutionary refusal to adapt to a toxic, misaligned environment. Your psyche has essentially held a space open. It's refusing to accept the superficial, waiting patiently for something genuinely profound and authentic to finally fill it.
Reconnecting with life from this place requires a quiet, almost radical rebellion of neuroplasticity. It starts with embodiment, just grounding your awareness back into the physical present. Seriously, something as simple as feeling the warmth of a coffee cup in your hands or actually noticing the rhythm of your breath. Then, you have to start setting fierce, unapologetic boundaries on your internal analysis. You have to ask yourself, does this thought serve me right now, or is it starving me? And finally, you have to learn how to share silence with other people without the compulsive need to constantly decode it. Just let the silence be.
Because the ultimate healing here requires you to finally bridge the gap between the intellect and the body. The way out isn't to somehow force yourself to think less, it is to allow yourself to feel more. You have to let raw, unedited, messy feelings back into a process that has been entirely hijacked by your logic. You have to stop mistaking the intellectual understanding of a feeling for the actual physical experience of feeling it. Let your life be a little messy. Let things be unresolved. Just surrender to the actual moment.
When all those relentless, echoing questions finally begin to fall silent, you are going to hear a very quiet pulse right beneath the thought. Listen to it. You are not broken for feeling things this deeply. You are simply awake. You were never meant to think your way to peace, only to remember that you already are it. So, the very next time you find yourself standing entirely alone in that quiet, crowded room, will you try to decode the silence again, or will you finally, beautifully, let it fill you?